Hello and welcome to Nithrania YouTube channel. Finally, I'm here with my video of top 25 games of 2020, the games which I like the most in this year. It's end of March, that's why I'm saying finally. I wanted to wait for the games which were supposed to arrive in February, March, and they have actually arrived in March, some of them. And I wanted to wait for these games because I had a suspicion that they would make it into my list, and not only into top 25, but actually into top 5, some of them top 10. So that's why I wanted to wait. It was a difficult year from all kinds of perspectives, and I have to say some of these games I only played online months and months ago, and when they finally arrived as a physical copies, I was glad that my opinion didn't really change about those games. It's a different taste playing the games online. We don't play board games to play them online, obviously, but that's how the world is at the moment. Anyway, I played all these games on my list. I finally managed to play them all physically with the physical copies, and it's going to be. I will try to do it in one go in 1 hour. So 2 to 3 minutes per game. They'll give you some short description. It was a good year for my taste. You will see very interesting. Number one, I think you have not seen any videos on my channel related to this kind of games. And without any further ado, let's get started. So on my number 25, I have Tawantinsuyu. It's one of those T games from the family of Tawantinsuyu, Tekkenu, Trismegistus, Tzolk'in, Teotihuacan, so the games from Daniel Tassini and David Turci. Tawantinsuyu, there's a lot about this game that I really love, not just like I love. This worker placement, different colors of workers, when they are placed together, you get multiple actions during the same turn, and you have to take different actions. So you try to put these workers of the same color together. The color doesn't really belong to you. Those are just specializations of these workers. And you have to have a card with a specific symbol in order to place the worker on the specific space on the game board. So I like that a lot. However, there's a lot of things which I think are not really necessary in the game, and they make the game a lot more convoluted than it could have been. I like these tapestries, building these tapestries. That's beautiful. I like the idea of buildings. I built something. The buildings would give me some permanent effects, sometimes not really permanent, like one-time effect. I have to recharge them. Then I move on this statue track or whatever it's called. That's nice, but then there are these area controls in the corners. It's just, for my taste, it's just way too many things, and it's how is it called? Point salad type of game. So you score points everywhere. As I said, I like a lot about these games, but I think there's many aspects of the game which I don't think make the game any better. They make it more complicated, and I didn't enjoy it. I didn't like calculating the cost of placing the worker just because it's on a different tier. Then also it's a different segment than those high priests above. Those high priests, as they are moving, they also take some actions. When I build a building and it's not a permanent effect, I have to recharge those buildings. There are military cards which allow me to take some benefits in those corners, and that scores victory points based on the number of dead workers. Unfortunately, these are just way too many things in one game. If it only contained this mechanism of workers of different colors with a card with a matching symbol, maybe those tapestries, maybe those buildings, maybe the statue track, that would be enough, would be a fantastic game. This way, it's only 25 on my list. And in addition to that, it's completely dry. I mean, the theme is not there. It's just a bunch of mechanisms that work somehow together. For the similar reason, I don't have Tekkenu on my list of 25 games at all. It was even more convoluted for me. It was beautiful mechanism of this changing attributes of dice based on the shadow cast by that obelisk. That mechanism itself would be a fantastic game itself, and then you would take some actions, simple actions, and build some pyramids or something. That would have been a great game itself, with lots of other things added to the game. It just made it. I played it twice, and no desire to play that game ever. So Town Tensu 25, 24. On the completely other end of the spectrum of this complexity is Calico. Very small, family type of game, just simple tile laying with around 3 scoring tiles. You're laying these tiles of different colors and different patterns, and you try to lay them in a specific pattern so that you score the most victory points. Simple, super simple rules, very quick and easy. However, such a brain burner. I love this game. It's a family type of game, really. You can teach this game anyone, even the non-gamers. Looks beautiful, beautiful colors, beautiful patterns. So 24, Calico for me. Now 23 is a game which I hesitated whether to put it on my list or not. It's called Four Gardens. It's from the Czech designer Martin Doležal. And it was published by the Korean studio. Apologies, I don't recall the name. Korea Board Games, sorry. Korea Board Game Studio. I have the version which also has the English rules. However, the box is in Korean language with some English, small English translation as well. However, it's not the official English release as far as I know. Anyway, I have the game. It was released in 2020, so it's on my list. It has a beautiful pyramid, rotating pyramids, and when you gain resources from the pyramid, you gain them from top to bottom or from bottom to top, but you only have a limited space in your repository, and you're building panoramas of cards. And to build a card, you need some of these resources. You can build these panoramas in any order you want. However, those large ones give you more and more victory points. However, when you finish smaller ones, or when you finish any panorama, you get some bonus, which might be pretty important in this game. So the question is, you start with smaller one, you gain fewer victory points, however, you gain these bonuses, or you try to score points, not really gaining bonuses. Very interesting. Simple rules, again, I like that. It's, again, family type of game. Looks really nice. The table presence with this pyramid, with this pagoda. Sorry, it's a pagoda. That looks also really, really nice. I was impressed with this game. It's going to be it's going to stay in my collection. It's also a game for non-gamers, easy to learn. So 23 Four Gardens. Now 22 is another lightweight game, Nithrania, in which you are basically trying to collect sets of these warriors, and those warriors have different colors. Or they all have the same color. I think they're more or less black and white or black and white cards with colored banners. So each color. Each type of warrior is scored in a different way. The more you have of the same type, the more you score. But if you collect one warrior from each color, so you have a set, you also have a powerful bonus. So again, there's a decision making. Do I collect just one type of warriors, or do I collect sets? Now, how you collect them is also very interesting. You have 5 tokens. Each token has a certain value, and you are going into 3 different taverns where you recruit these warriors, and it's a bidding mechanism. You take 1 token and you place it in each tavern, and the highest value is recruiting the warrior first from that tavern. The second value recruits the second, and so on. So you are trying to place these tokens into these taverns so that you get those warriors that you really want. And if you place a token with a 0 value, you don't. You still draw. I think you still recruit the warrior, However, you can exchange the tokens in your reserve for higher value tokens. This is very interesting mechanism. You're trying to get higher values, so you go last to pick up a warrior, but you are increasing the number or the value of your tokens so that in later turns you can use the highest value token and recruit the warriors you want. Beautiful mechanism, lightweight, lot of fun. We do public, we don't these days, but we used to do public gaming sessions every 2 weeks in a place called Taverna. This is definitely a game which stays in our collection. It's going to be played heavily in those public gaming sessions when it start again at one point in time. So 22 Nidavellir. 21, another small game, really small box called Cafe. Beautiful, very simple rules. The game about producing coffee. There are 4 actions in the game. Produce coffee. How do you go? Produce coffee. Then dry the coffee, green the coffee, and then deliver to the shops and cafeterias or to your warehouse. And it's about producing as much as you can. And there are cards, and these cards, it's basically tile laying game. You have these cards which need to be laid next to each other. You have to overlay the new card on top of any other previous cards in a certain way. And each card has 6 squares. And when you manage to place these cards in such a way that these action spaces of the same type are connected, with one action you can activate all these action spaces. So it's a tile laying action production type of game. Very simple, very quick, 8 rounds. In each round you take one of those cards and place it in your tableau, and you run those actions based on you get a number of symbols in your tableau. Very simple, quick, easy. I like that game a lot. So 21 Cafe. Number 20 is another small game, card game in a similar box called Fort. It's a deck building, deck deconstruction type of game. Basically a small engine building, because players are using cards to get 2 types of resources, and they're building a small fort which requires these resources, and they can also get victory points just by activating the cards. So I have a deck of cards, I play some of those cards, and each card has a private effect which only I can activate, and a public effect which every player around the table can activate. I can play the cards of the same suit. I can power up these cards following certain rules, and then the cards which I didn't use from my hand, which I didn't use that round, go up for sale for other players. So I'm trying to build the small card engine in my hand, which would work as best as possible, and the cards which I don't use are offered to other players. I have the same ability, same opportunity. I can also grab cards from other players if they don't use it, and it's just about building this fort, grabbing those resources, and scoring victory points in 2 different ways. Simple. I like it a lot. The reason why it's only on place 20 is that for what it is, it takes a little longer than I would like. It just we played a 4-player game. Somehow we reached 1.5 hours almost for such a small game, card game. I would say I would like it to be much faster. Maybe we weren't we didn't understand the symbols very well. Maybe we had to look into those symbols very often. I don't know, but it just took a little longer than I would like to. I like the game a lot, but for what it is, it just takes a little longer than I would like. So, number 19, Alma Mater. This is a beautiful Euro game. about running the university. Players are recruiting students and professors, and it's a worker placement game. There are very few worker placement spots. In some of those spots, you take these, you recruit these students. Somewhere you recruit these professors. Then there is this research track where, as you climb up, you have to take the research action. As you climb up, you gain some bonuses. So I would say if you can focus on this research track only, and if not, you can take other worker placement spots. So there are several approaches how to navigate the game. And the beautiful thing about the game are the books in the game. Each player has their own books with obviously the book of one color. And when you hire professors, when you hire students, you need the books, not just your own one, but also from other players. And based on your position on this research track, the player who is highest on this track has the most valuable books. Then the second player has the second most valuable books. And when you hire these students and professors, you need the books, especially for the students, you need the books of a specific category. Some students require the books from the highest ranked books. So if it's not mine, I need to buy them from my opponents. Beautiful mechanisms how this is interconnected. I like it a lot. The theme is not really there that much. It is. The thing why I didn't like it so much that it's not in my top 10 is the fact that this research track, it was quite difficult to get progress on this research track. And I enjoyed the game. I couldn't say that I loved the game so much. It was quite dry, very difficult to somehow calculate several turns ahead and to see what do I need. And sometimes this worker placement spots were so crowded that my plans were simply torpedoed by my opponent, so I had to take a different way, and I didn't advance on this research track as much as I would like to. Difficult game to play, definitely difficult to play. I liked it a lot, but it's just 19. It means it's not a bad game. It's pretty great. However, there are better games which are more smoother than this one. So Alma Mater, nice game. I like these mechanisms of exchanging and buying and selling books, but it was a little too complicated. I would say a little bit too complicated. Then this is what, 18 Hallertau, another farming game from Uwe Rosenberg. I love Agricola. It's in my top 15, I believe, top 15 games of all time. By the way, I'm going to do this video of top 50 of all time in a very near future, hopefully in April. I have the ranking ready. So I think Agricola is in my top 15 of all time. Caverna is not there. I played Caverna maybe 15 times, many years ago. I didn't like it as much as I like Agricola. What I like about Agricola is this tense, every turn counts, everything is important, timing is important. In Caverna, if I didn't have my best space, best option available, there was always a second or a third option available. Not as best, but I could still do whatever I needed to do. In Agricola, sometimes if someone takes the spot which I really needed, I was screwed up. So that was something that made the game tough, difficult, but the game I really love. Caverna was not like that. And Hallertau is very similar to Caverna. I played 4 games. In every single game I managed to move this community center to the very end, and I scored 70 points just there. In Hallertau you basically do the same thing as you do in other farming games. Gain resources. This time I think there's 9 or 10 types of resources. Gain resources. There are some worker placement spots where you take these resources or exchange or convert. Then there are farms. You place resources on farms and get more resources later on. So you do this harvest. There are some cards which you can play. If you fulfill conditions, you get some bonuses. So it works nice. I liked it, but it wasn't too much of a challenge for me. So nice game. I liked it, but it's still far away from Agricola for me. Then 17, Panem. This is the game which actually arrived just 2 weeks ago, and we played it online. We liked it a lot. We played the physical copy finally. We liked it a lot. So that's why it's still it's number 17. The game about expanding your own airlines on the world map. And in addition to your airlines and the airlines of your opponents, there is this Pan American Airlines, which is also expanding. And again, it's another worker placement with a little bit of bidding. There are 5 areas where you place your workers. You can build airports. You can take the destination cards, which allow you to place your airplanes and claim the routes on the map. You can take obviously the airplanes, and then you can place the routes and take some directives and gain a priority for the next round. So very simple, and it's played over 7 rounds. And the objective of the game is actually to gain stocks from this Pan Am company, which is just a piece of card, nothing else. It's about how each round. The stock price is changing. Usually it's rising and rising over the course of the game. So it's about who has the most shares at the end of the game. Nothing else counts. If you buy the shares very early in the game, they're cheap. You can gain more shares. However, you don't have the money to place your workers to take actions on the board. So you are slowed down significantly. If you save the money and you build up your own airline, you will generate money, but those shares will be more expensive later in the game. So it's a trade-off. Beautiful. We played several games. Every single time the difference between first and a second player was just 1 point. Every time. 25 to 24, 23, 22. Within 3 or 4 points, all the players in the game were within 3 or 4 number of shares. Very close game. Whatever approach you take, it's very well balanced. We like it a lot. So Panem, number 17. Why it's here? It's not that great as other games on my list. As I said, this was a great year for me personally. This was a great year. So Panem, I'm keeping it definitely in my collection. Number 17. Number 16 is a game which is it's a Martin Wallace game, Anno 1800, which I don't know how I feel about this game, to be honest. We played it several times already. It's a different beast. It's something that I have not seen in board gaming before. The game has, I think, 27 resources. The interesting fact is that Martin Wallace was asked to do the game, and he had no idea about this Anno 1800 game. So if I remember correctly, I read the interview. He said he paid his friends to play the computer game so that he knows what the game is about, and then he had a very, very limited time to design the game so that it hits the production cycle and would be ready for SN 2020, which didn't happen. Anyway, he had very little time to do the game, and in this game, it's it's like a tree, technological tree. We all start with some basic technologies or basic resources, and as the game progresses, we have more advanced technologies available and more resources available, and we take the cards, and those cards, when we fulfill conditions, when we are able to generate all the resources on those cards, we can play the cards for the effect. However, those cards score victory points. That's the main idea, to play the cards. And they also give some bonuses. However, I don't have to have all the resources. If other players have those resources in their tableaus, I can buy those resources basically for free. It's like in Seven Wonders. It doesn't cost me much. It's the other player gains the gold from the general reserve. I have to spend some exploration tokens, so it doesn't really cost too much. I can use the resources and tableaus of other players, so we're helping each other somehow. And the game ends when one player gets rid of all their cards, and this is very tricky. If you take more and more workers, with each worker you take a card. If you get the workers as a bonus from the card, you get more and more cards. So we had a player, sometimes we have a player who has not a hand of cards, he had a deck of cards in his hand. Obviously he's not able to finish the game, but he can still score very high if there is no penalty for having cards in the hand at the end of the game. So the game can be very short. The game can take on long hours, and I still don't know how I feel about this game. Sometimes it feels great, and I would put it in my top 5. Sometimes I feel like, okay, I don't have the card which gives me this purple worker. I don't have the card which helps me speed up or helps me start up my engine and get more powerful technologies and more powerful resources or more valuable resources. And I feel like I am slightly getting behind just because I don't get those resources cheaper. There's still a way how to get those workers and more advanced technologies, but it costs a lot of resources. And if other players have those cards and I don't, it feels like the luck is playing a significant role in the game. Then in other games it doesn't feel like that. Then after 3 games, which were great, I said, okay, it's going to be my top 5. We played a game, and I was so slow at the start of the game just because I didn't have those good cards. And my 2 opponents had the great cards. They just skyrocketed, and I was way behind them and had no chance to catch up, just because I had bad luck drawing the cards. I don't know. That's why it's number 16. It has a great potential. I like the game a lot, but I still don't know how much really I like the game or not. And it's a different beast, and I don't have a stable opinion on this game. Those great experiences are then interrupted by some experience which I don't really like that much. So Anno 1800, number 16. Now, number 15, another small game in a small box, which surprised me a lot. I think in the first half of the year, Fallout Shelter. Very simple worker placement. I'm not a huge fan of Fallout. I've never played these computer games. But as a worker placement game here, you only collect 3 resources, or 2 resources, energy and water, and then this happiness, and the happiness is basically it's victory points at the end of the game. And you're building your rooms in your vault. You can use vaults of other players. There are some monsters in the game which you can also eliminate and score happiness for that. Several ways how to win the game, several approaches to how to win. You can win the game with 4 workers, you can win the game with 7 workers. which is also something I have not seen in other games. It's so well balanced. I've seen players winning with 4 and winning with 7. It takes time to have 7 workers. By the time you have the 7 workers, the other player with just 4 workers may be already approaching the end of the game trigger, and then with the 7 workers, that player is catching up very quickly. So both ways are feasible. And given what it is, how small the game is in a small box, we liked it a lot. I still have the game over there, and I'm not thinking about selling the game. I really like it a lot. So Fallout Shelter, although it's not the theme that I would be, I would love that much. I'm neutral to this theme. I like the game a lot. And then from 14 up, these games are really something that caught my attention this year. These are already getting to my top 50. Some of these, most of these games ended up in my top 50 of all time. That's why I'm saying this year was so great. So starting with number 14, Ride the Rails. From Capstone Games, a very simple train game. And the train and shares game. It's not 18xx type of game, not at all. But there are 5 or 6 colors of trains, starting with only 2 colors, and players are investors. They buy a train from a specific company, from a specific color, and then the players are building routes on the map of the US. And there are many cities on the map, and players are trying to connect these cities. At the end of the turn, I take a traveler in one city and travel with that traveler to any other city. I have to go through as many cities as I want, as I need, because the more cities I go through, the more money it generates for me and also for the company. And I really have to say that the game has one list, one sheet of paper as rules, 2 pages. I have not seen something like that in the last 15-20 years for such a. It's not a really complex game, but it's a game. I would say it's a medium weight game. I have seen rules which are really just one sheet of paper, but those are very simple, small games. This type of game with just one sheet of paper, 2 pages, not more, simple rules, fantastic experience. 1 hour of game. The map at the end of the game looks always differently. It's always a challenge to think about which company I'm going to invest in, which means which train, which color of the train I'm taking this turn, and then how I'm going to build the piece of track which I'm entitled to do. Whether to connect the east-west, whether to connect with other players' networks, or prevent them from connecting to our networks. Beautiful, simple rules, 1 hour of gameplay. Excellent. Ride the Rails, number 14. Then, number 13, Mariposas. It's a game from the designer of Wingspan, Elizabeth Hargrave. You are having these butterflies that travel across the area and then they come back. Looks beautiful. Again, simple rules. This is a family type of game, I would say. It's not a very heavy game or very difficult to play, but I'm having so much fun playing this game. Again, the results at the end of the game are very close. The decision when and where to hatch your butterflies, it depends on the goals. It depends on the strategy you want to take. The decision when to start coming back because you can score a lot of victory points at the end of the game when you have these butterflies in the starting location. Beautiful. Simple, just play cards and move your butterflies, make decisions, collect those flowers, and make decisions when and where to hatch, where to go. It's not always wise to hatch as early as possible. Sometimes it's even great to hatch very late in the game. Beautiful, beautiful design. I like it a lot. So Mariposas 13. Number 12, Under Falling Sky. I wouldn't say that I would have a solo game in this list, but I have. It's a dice placement, dice placement game. I'm not a huge fan of the theme, defending the Earth against invaders. Not a huge fan, but it's fine. It makes sense. I'm on the Earth, or on the Earth base, rolling dice, assigning the dice to specific action spaces, and those action spaces do something. Obviously, they fire against these invaders coming from space. I can improve my base. I have to dig in deeper to make other action spaces available for me, so to say. Solo game with a great campaign. I'm not going to talk too much about it. I like the game a lot, really. If it weren't for this theme, if the theme was something different, I think it would be in my top 5. I don't need to have the theme in the games. I'm not a guy who has to have a theme just to have fun. But this one, not a huge fan of this one. But the game mechanisms, ideas, and how it's all made, how it all works perfectly, how it makes me think about every single die, where to place it. Great, just a great game. I love it so much. So Under Falling Sky is number 12. Then number 11, a game which surprised me in the middle of the year. The game I didn't know anything about. Somehow I missed it on the Kickstarter, and it got into my my radar attention just by the lucky accident. High Rise, game from Gil Hova, similar to Glenmore Chronicles 2. This one is not really a rondel. It's what we call a time track. We are building the city, building the skyscrapers and buildings in a city, and we're going through this time track, which is it's not really a rondel, but on the path, and you can only move forward. You cannot move back. So when you move forward and take the action, you may never move back and take the actions that are behind you, and it's always the turn of the player who is furthest behind. You may not take every single space as it is in Glenmore. These spaces are grouped together in some smaller areas, but you can, if someone jumps too far ahead, you can actually take a lot of nice spots until you get to that player. If you jump further ahead, there are some bonuses in 4 spaces, and when you build these buildings, you want to build as high as possible based on the blueprints, which are different for each round. So you're trying to collect the resources, build the highest buildings because they score the victory points. But there are also other specific cards which score the victory points. The beautiful thing is that the further you go to the end of this time track, the end of this path, the more powerful cards and more powerful abilities are towards the end of the track. So players are rushing to get there first. However, you need to get those resources. Lots of fantastic decision making in this one. You can play 2 rounds, you can play 3 rounds as the longer game. The 2 rounds is called a standard game. I would play 3 rounds. It takes longer, obviously, but the strategic depth in this 3 rounds game is much higher, much deeper than in the standard game, in the 2 rounds game. I love the game so much. there's this how is it called, corruption track. You can take the action where other player is as well, but you take the corruption, and it's not really a problem if you don't have the most corruption of all players. However, even this corruption can be used as a resource in the game. It's also a very viable strategy. Great game. High Rise, number 11. Number 10, Dune Imperium. This is a game which we had maybe the most the toughest discussion of all the games in my list, all the games we have played over the course of the game. With this one, within our gaming group, we still have the discussions. It's March, we played the game months and months ago, and we still have lots of discussion about it. I say it's a worker placement combined with card play. It's not really a deck building. You don't really build a deck. Over the course of the game, you may take 6-7 cards, but I think that's too much. You need to thin the deck, or you need to find a way how to get more and more cards and run through your deck of cards, because then it's very luck dependent. If you have 20 cards in your deck and you only take 5 every round, it can feel lucky, which is not because it's you. If you make the deck too thick and those cards don't really work together at all. So it's primarily worker placement, beautiful worker placement with some conflicting area. You score victory points on these faction with those 4 factions. You can score victory points in this conflict area. You can score victory points by buying those cards. I don't remember how they called, but you buy the card which just gives you 1 victory point, but it's an expensive card, so you have to build the engine how to be able to buy that card at the end of your turn. There's a lot of strategic depth in this game, I believe, and I like it a lot. There are some people who like it even more than me, and there are some people for whom this was the worst game of 2020. So that's why I'm saying we had lots of discussion on this one, and if the game generates so much discussion, it's a great game. So Dune Imperium, number 10. Number 9 is a game which we only played online for in 2020, and it finally arrived as a physical copy in February, end of February, maybe even early March, I don't remember. But I was waiting for this game specifically, Red Cathedral, the game which is quite simple, and it's actually quite small. Simple game, building this cathedral in Moscow, which is an area control mechanism. Players score victory points based on how many segments of those towers they built. But this time the rondo, which is on the game board, which is a way how to gain resources with dice of different colors, and you take the die with the value, you move it that many spaces, and you gain resources where you land with the die. If there are more dice in the space, you get those resources multiple times. Fantastic mechanism with some 4 cards in 4 corners, so generating these resources, very nice mechanism. I like it a lot. I love it a lot. You have limited space for your resources. Then these victory points and prestige points or recognition points, I think they're called. Yeah, whatever. There are at the start of the game, each this prestige point is worth 4 or even 5 simple victory points. I don't remember how they're called, but those big victory points are worth several small victory points. But it's more difficult to get those big victory points, so you can again gain resources, go very slow, forget about area control, just do these decorations and do things which don't generate small victory points, but they generate those big ones, and you can make big jumps at the start of the game. Later in the game, that ratio is reducing, and at the end of the game, or at the end of that victory point track, it goes back to 1-to-1. So by that time you have to have that engine, how to score those small victory points, how to build those towers, how to generate resources there. Great. I love this game so much. We played it online many times and we loved it. So I was waiting to get the physical copy, and we just confirmed our own opinion. Fantastic game. Red Cathedral, small, simple rules, small box, lots of depth. Number 9. Number 8 is a game which is way more complicated than Red Cathedral, and I'm thinking about if it's correct to have it on number 8. But I had a lot of thinking about this one. Praga Caput Regni from Delicious Games and Vladimir Suchy, the author of Underwater Cities. Praga Caput Regni is another game which I called Pyromancer games. There are 6 actions in the game, and players take 16 turns. Reminds me of these tea games, Tekkenu, Trismegistus, Tawantinsuyu, and so on. You only have 16 turns, and on each turn you only can do one of the 6 actions. But those actions are not simple actions. You take an action and then it explodes into many mini actions and mini turns. Sometimes we even forget, when I play my action with many mini actions, sometimes I forget about those actions and my opponents tell me, yeah, you forgot this one, and here you also scored 2 victory points for this one. It's a great design. I love the design. I love just with the 6 actions, you have to find synergies. There are maybe 3 different ways which you can go, and you have to find synergies between those 6 actions. It's a challenging game, challenging design, definitely a heavy game for me, very heavy, works brilliantly, well balanced. We played several games, and in one of those games we ended up with the 2 players. We won the game. We both scored 132 points, which is not that much, but we both scored 132, and we both took completely different approach to the game. So, and not just in this one, in other games we also were very close. So it is balanced, it is well designed, it works well. I'm not able to wrap my head around the game. And I don't really like, I feel like I don't really like the games which have the one action which explodes into many mini actions, sub-actions, sub-turns, mini-turns, whatever you call it. It's difficult for me to think about it, to think ahead. It's difficult for me to think about what other players want to do, how their turns would go out, and not even think, well, let alone thinking about 2 or 3 turns ahead. Impossible. So it comes to the fact that it's my turn. I look at the options, and it's my immediate decision. What do I do now? What looks best at the moment? I don't feel like I can make a strategy. Yes, if I want to go to build the Charles Bridge, I will probably want to get there at the end of the game or over the course of the game. So I have the basic strategy, but then it's about how the situation, actual situation looks like, and what's the best option at the moment. So lots of work. It feels like lots of work, but the game is very well designed, perfectly balanced, or very well balanced. Looks beautiful. So number 8, Praga Caput Regni. Another one which still comes to my mind. Still, I don't know how to handle this game. Yeah, quite contrary to Red Cathedral, which is simple, easy to plan ahead, easy to see what I need to do to get there, easy to see what other players can do to stop me. easy to see what I can do to prevent those players to stop me. If they see it, they can also do something else to stop me from stopping them. Completely different approaches to the game, and I think I like the latter one more. I think the simple turns, which I can see ahead, and I can plan. It's type of chess thinking. The situation on the board doesn't change, and I'm looking at the board, and in my head, in my vision, there's a lot of things happening, and many scenarios are happening. Some of them are great, some of them are really threatening. I need to think about those. And a lot of things are happening in the game, even though the game state doesn't change that much. In Praga Caput Regni and the games like that, it doesn't happen. I'm not able to do this. In Red Cathedral and these smaller games, simple games with a lot of depth, I can do that. And if I execute a plan, which I saw several turns ahead, and I made correct moves to execute that plan, that gives me a lot of satisfaction that I executed on this plan. It really rewards me internally. I saw how to solve the puzzle, and I made it happen. Feels fantastic. With games like Praga Caput Regni, Tavan Tinsuyu, Tekkenu, I feel like, oh, suddenly something appeared on the game board, and I thought, okay, I can use this one. Or something happens, and was there anything I could do to prevent it? I don't know, probably no. So it's more situational. And I like those games, those chess type games where I can plan ahead, see my turns, execute, and see what I need to do to prevent other players from stopping me doing that. So these kind of games I like. That's why Praga is a fantastic design. Only number 8. Coming to number 7, Viscounts of the West Kingdom. Compared to Praga Caput Regni, this one has easier actions or more simple actions. 3 different ways how to approach the game, how to 3 different strategies, maybe 4 different strategies. This one is so high because I had so much fun. This one is a little bit of a deck building. I have these decks in the deck of cards, and I draw the card, and I have deck of cards in my hands, and those cards are going through my player board. They give me specific symbols which affect the actions I can take. They affect the power of those actions. So something I can really look at and plan ahead a little bit. And then the beautiful game board where I move my Viscount and do the actions, and I can combine those actions. This one I had so much fun. We played it several times. I tried building this this castle inside. I tried building buildings. I tried transcripting those manuscripts. You can score a lot of victory points. There's so much you can achieve. Lots of accomplishments, small accomplishments during the game. This game rewards me a lot because I get a lot of things done. And even if I lose, I still feel like I personally did a lot in the game. I built a lot of buildings. I transcripted manuscripts. I just did a lot and feel a sense of accomplishments. So this game does it really well. It's not that difficult. It's not a heavy game. It's a medium weight for me personally, but we had so much fun every time we played it. Beautiful graphics. So Viscounts. For me, this is the best of this trilogy: Architects, Paladins, and Viscounts of the West Kingdom. This one is the highest for me. I like it most. So number 7, Viscounts. Number 6, we're coming back to another train game. And this one, again, I missed the Kickstarter. I remember looking at it. And I remember saying to myself, looks okay. Pacific Rails. I was so wrong. Thankfully, a friend of mine found the game in the retail So it didn't have we didn't have the Kickstarter copy. He found the game in a retail, and he brought it, and we just tried the game, and we were blown away. We are building the track, railway tracks on a map, and we're trying to connect east and west together. Once we connect the east and west with the railway track, the end game triggers, and in the game we are collecting resources, transforming resources into these track tiles, and then building the track. On the game board there are some stations. When we get to the station, we get victory points, we get some bonuses. But the main mechanism of the game is actually worker placement mechanism. There's a grid of 3x3 actions. And we don't place workers on those actions. We place workers in between, like on the lines on this grid. So when I place a worker, I can take an action which is adjacent to that worker. So usually 2 different actions. When I place a worker and I choose an action, and that action already has another worker of my color in another space, I can take that action twice. In addition, when I take the worker away, so it's not just worker placement, it's also worker displacement game. When I take it away, it also triggers that action. If I have multiple workers, I can trigger that action multiple times. Phenomenal. Planning which resources I need to do. Obviously, you don't have those great actions next to each other. No, you have to move those workers. You have a limited number of workers. But there are many workers, so the place can get very crowded. If you really need, you can place a worker on the action space, not just next to the action, but also on the action space. If you don't have any worker around, you kick every other worker away, but those players gain hats, cowboy hats, which actually is another action, bonus action, which they can take. And this works so brilliantly. You have to take the resources. You're also building a small train, which is an engine, small engine in front of you, which generates these tracks. I was blown away with this game. It works so fantastic. Simple rules, again, very simple. Just place a worker, take an action, take it multiple times if you have the multiple workers in that space, and well, build a track. You get victory points for how long the track is when you build it. At the end of the game, you also get victory points for number of stations you put on the game board. So you can either build long track and gain victory points, or you can build small tracks and place more stations on the game board, or more telegraphs, which also gives you some victory points. So again, different approaches, different strategies available. They seem to be very well balanced. I love this game so much. As I said, out of nowhere, and I still don't know why. I just looking at the Kickstarter, I was thinking, but meh, looks okay. Not great, not terrible. I was so wrong. So Pacific Rails number 6. Now, number 5 is another game which is very easy to play, looks beautiful. Lost Ruins of Arnak. Another mix of worker placement, a little bit of a deck building, climbing on this research track. I was thinking about what made it into my top 5, actually. What made it into my top 5? This game does so many things so well. Easy rules, simple rules, easy to play, easy to teach. Looks beautiful. Again, lots of accomplishments. Lots of fun. Building on a track, it's easy to do a lot of things in the game. Some people complain that if you specialize, you may not really specialize in doing one thing or another. And I think it's a good thing. Here you can do a lot of things. You have to use those workers. As the game progresses, you can use more powerful actions, you get more resources. It's about have to combine my small actions, have to gain resources here to move on the research track. So I think it works together. I cannot ignore one and only do the other, because I have to use those workers. I can use them to generate resources, and also defeat those monsters, or not really defeat them, but I don't recall that term which is used there. But actually defeat, you remove them from the game board and they score victory points. But you also have to move this research track, and for that you need the resources from those workers there. It works so well together. Then those cards, simple cards, some of them just give you some resources. Some cards give you these travel icons so that you can travel. Some cards give you some effects. You can buy items, you can buy artifacts. You don't really buy a lot of them during the game. You may, but then the deck is thick. So you also play a little bit of this deck building, and you take these small statues, which also give you some resources if you need. It just all works so well. I can't think of anything in this game which I would say I don't like that in that game. There's nothing. I really like everything in this game. It works so smooth, so well. It's so pleasant experience. Beautiful. So I was so much impressed with this one. Lost Ruins of Arnak, number 5. Then number 4 is another game which arrived very late. I think it was late February. And I was so happy that I finally managed to get hold of this game. And it's a game from Dennis Chan about building the technological tree beyond the space. I've seen many positive comments about the game. In October, in November, the game wasn't available online. Rio Grande Games announced that they are building their own tabletop simulator mode. They want to have it official, well tested. So it wasn't available online. I couldn't play the game online, and I've heard so many great opinions and positive reviews on this game. I wanted to get this game so badly, but it wasn't available in Europe. Finally, it arrived in February, and I love the game. It is very simple. Again, I love this concept of having simple rules, but lots of depth in the game. In this game, you are building technology tree. As you research technologies, you can only, obviously, from this perspective, if I'm taking this technology line, I may not really jump down. So I'm just expanding the certain area of the technology tree, and the actions that I discover, or the technologies that I develop, those technologies can only be used by players who develop those technologies, who discover those technologies. So when we talk about special abilities in the game and asymmetrical abilities in the game, this one, you are building these special abilities for yourself, because if you're going in a certain direction, if you discover a certain part of this technology tree and you're the only one, then you're the only one who can use those actions. If other players take a different path, they are the only ones who you can use those actions. You can take the same path as well. It's perfectly okay. Then you would be both able to use those actions. But the game concept is the concept itself makes you create special abilities for you. You get victory points for the technologies you develop, and there's also a small board where there are rockets or spaceships which you can use to travel to nearby planetary systems, you colonize those systems. So basically you're going to take the card. The card has some special abilities, and if you have certain number of spaceships with a certain power, total power, you can colonize that system, which means you take the card and put it into your tableau. You may have some one-time effect or special permanent effect, but you score victory points for that. So you can score victory points for developing technologies, you can score victory points for colonizing systems. Sometimes it's the technologies that appear on the game board and their combination and their placement allows you to ignore the development of higher level technologies, and you can focus on discovering or colonizing the systems, colonizing the cards, and gain victory points from the cards. Sometimes it's easier or more beneficial to continue developing the technology. Sometimes a mix, depends on what other players are doing. Fantastic. You just have one worker. It's a worker placement where you only have one worker, and you place the worker on action spaces on this technological tree, and you either discover more technologies, or you gain some resources, or you travel in space and you colonize the systems. You need resources for everything. You need your own resources. You need some coal. So taking those actions is really about either developing or getting resources or colonizing systems. Fantastic. We played the game since it arrived. We played it several times. We loved every single game we played, and we play it more and more. The technological tree is always different. Every time you finish the game, it looks completely different. When it starts developing, we already see, okay, does it make sense to move to space? Sometimes we have really Star Wars games. When several players are fighting for these systems, I can go ahead and just develop technologies. Sometimes they see, okay, he developed a fantastic technology, and they try to follow me and go the same way. Sometimes half of the technological tree is just not developed, it's not discovered. Sometimes it's almost all discovered, and very few ships in very few ships in the space. Fantastic. We love this game so much. Beyond the Sun, I've heard so many great comments, and I can confirm I had the suspicion this would be in my top 10, top 5. It's perfectly there. So Beyond the Sun, number 4. Now, number 3 is another game which I didn't know anything about until I found it somehow. I saw someone mentioning the game, and yeah, I think so. I don't really remember. I think it was just mentioning the game, and I looked at the game, and I fell in love just with how the game looked. So I wanted to try the game, and when we tried the game, when we played the game, I knew instantly this is going to be my top 5 minimum, if not top 3. It is top 3. It's Merv from Osprey Games. The game that does similar things as Praga Capodregni, as Tekeno, as Tawantinsuyu, but it does much, much better. At least for my taste, it does it much better. Players only have 12 turns in the game. 1, 2, 3, 4 times 3, 12 turns. And those turns are very simple. They can be more and more powerful, but they are very simple. You move around the city, this square city. You move somewhere, you place a building in one of the spots, you activate that, you gain resources from that row or from the column, or column and row. And you can take there are 6 actions available in the game. And those actions are very simple. You just spend resources to get cards. Spend resources to gain scrolls. Spend resources to gain goods. Spend resources to build walls. Those actions are not these grenades which explode into many different mini turns. No, simple action. The action can be more powerful because you can spend 1 resource and build 1 wall. You can spend 3 resources, build 3 walls. You can spend 4 resources, gain 4 scrolls instead of just 1 scroll for 1 resource. So later in the game, those resources, those actions can be more powerful just by spending more resources, but you still do the same simple thing, simple action. Not many different mini turns. Now, one of those actions is placing your meeple, your worker, in the palace, in the scoring area. You may do lots of things in the game. If you don't have the worker in the scoring area, you don't score anything. When you place it there, it costs resources, but other players see what you want to score, and the fight for that area starts. You can place 1 worker there, lure your opponents there, and then finally do something completely different, or build on do different things. You can specialize. You can find the synergies. There is a strategy. Some people say that this mosque track is overpowered. It's not. It's easier to play. It's easier to execute. Other strategies are more powerful, more difficult to execute. Well balanced, very well balanced. Every time we play the game, I try to do something else, something different. The interaction in the city is phenomenal. If you build a street with your buildings, you build 3 buildings there, and you think, those are my buildings, nobody would go there. Well, they would, because if they activate the building, they activate all the buildings of the same color. So when you build the powerful street, you build it powerful for everyone, and there is a very high likelihood that someone will jump there, not to prevent you from from going there, but using all those resources, getting lots of resources at the same time in one action with 1 turn. Fantastic interaction, easy to grasp, easy to understand, not so easy to play well. You have some different options. As I said, some of the strategies are different to execute, but they're so rewarding when it works out. I love this game so much. Every time we play it, I try something else, something different. Every time we're so close to each other in terms of the scores. And we had so much fun. It even works well with 2 players, but in a 3 and a 4 player it shines. Even the player order for the next turn, how you spend camels as another resource. Great. Yeah, I could talk about this game for a long time. Fantastic. Merv, number 3. Now, coming to number 2, this is a game which which is a struggle. It's a 2-player only game, and it's a struggle. It's Imperial Struggle, and it's a game where I have a good friend of mine. We played the game several times, and in every single game, several times during that game, we both say how I hate this game. It's a younger brother of Twilight Struggle, but this one is more complex, not complicated, more complex. In addition to the regions, there are these commodity markets which are scored. There are these 4 war conflicts which play a significant role in the game. In the first game we played, it was a game, I lost America region completely just because I lost a war in the last war. So the first game is really like, okay, getting to know what you can expect from that. The other ones were really great. Our scores were very close, although in one game, my opponent, the friend of mine, he was preparing for a big end of the game, and I managed to win the game in the middle of the game, just by one single point. And we said, okay, I won the game, but let's continue. How the game would continue if I wouldn't win the game just by one single point. And when we played the game, he finished the game and he won by, I think, 1 or 2 points. If we would have continued, so he built up the sort of the engine, and he would have just smashed me in the second part of the game. Ships don't seem to be important early in the game. They are super important later in the game. Europe seems to be very important early in the game. It's not so much important later in the game. So much to think about, so much to grasp. I think that every space on the game board is on fire in this game. I think that I need to do something everywhere all the time. It takes about 5 hours for us, but it's an epic experience. Every time this game is telling stories, it's writing the stories, how the world develops, how the dominance in each region develops. How the region, which seems to be completely dominated by one player, suddenly I find a plan how to get in and at least grab the commodity markets suddenly, somehow, which is unexpected. So with this action selection, which one you take, playing the event cards, sometimes they're powerful, sometimes they just help me to get in the region or in the market area, and with the next turn, which I can plan ahead, I can do a massive turn. If I save these treaty points and I can use debt, I can actually make a massive turn. In one game, my opponent completely eliminated me from Europe within just one turn. He used up all his treaty points, all the debt, but he just eliminated me from Europe because I didn't have any other tiles in that round or turn, whatever it's called. I didn't have any tiles that would allow me to play diplomatic or mess up with diplomatic spaces, so he just eliminated me from Europe. Opposed to that, I eliminated him from Caribbean and from half of the US. So suddenly the balance of the game shifted completely. This game is an epic experience. It always writes beautiful stories, and we hate the game so much, but we love the game so much. It's a heavy work. It's way more complicated than or not complicated, way more complex than Twilight Struggle. But it's so much rewarding. For some players it might be too complex, and I know some players prefer the Twilight Struggle. We love Twilight Struggle a lot as well, but there's one thing in Twilight Struggle which I don't like, and it's die. Rolling die when I do the coups, when I do these attempts. Sometimes it can be a not really game breaking, game changing, but it can be a bad luck I don't like that die in Twilight Struggle. In Imperial Struggle, there's no die. It's all there's no luck in the game, so it's all about what we do and how we do that. It's about how we manage those war conflicts. They're also very important. They're way more important than it may look. It may seem at the start of the game, or for the new players, they're way more important. So focusing on those as well, that's another aspect of the game which adds the complexity. So getting this all together, it's really a struggle, but the struggle we love so much. I mean, it's a fantastic design. So number 2, Imperial Struggle. Before I talk about that number 1 game, I have to say I get to these games thanks to my friend in my gaming group. Because last year when we did our top 25 games of all time, only in Slovak language, I'm going to do the top 50 of all time, my top 50 in English language as well. As I said in April, when we did this top 25, we had many great games, and we had many great comments, and some people asked us about certain types of games we have not played, or we have played but we didn't like that much. For example, we don't like, at least I don't personally really enjoy Lacerda games. We didn't have it in my in our top 25, so we got questions, and then the friend of mine asked the entire group that is there any other type of game which we have not played yet, which we have not tried. Because we tried a lot of games. We tried PAX games, PAX Premier, PAX Renaissance. I will talk about those games in my top 50. But we haven't played PAX games before, so we tried, and we love PAX Premier. It's a phenomenal game. Now, is there any other type of game we have not tried? And yes, there was one. It was 18XX games. 1830, 1846, 1882, you name it. So these games we have never played before. And so we have the 18CZ localized in Czech language. So I asked the publisher, have a good relationship with them, if they can send us this 18CZ game. It's from 2017, I think, or 2018. We tried the game, and I personally fell in love with that system immediately. It was a bit complicated, so we searched what other games are available. And then I found a game called 18 Chesapeake. And when we played the game, it was instantly my top game of 2020. And I already talked about 18XX games in my monthly review video, which is only for my Patreons. I fell in love with this 18XX system, and I will be making videos about the system itself. I will be making videos about some of these games. I love this system for several reasons. It's simple. Although it may not look like that because the rules may have 30 pages, but those rules cover all kinds of edge situations in the game. When you build tracks, you may have 2 pages of rules for that, but every one of us can build a railway track. We know how to do it. But per se, for all the legal reasons and just to make sure that every single situation is described in the rule book, it has to be described in the rule book, which means laying the track may have 2 pages of rules. So that's why those rules are very, very long. But the game is very simple. Basically, the 18XX system is about we are players, are investors, and we are investing our money into creating and developing railways, usually in 19th century. That's why the 18XX system, 1830, 1846, as I say, these years in the as the name of the game refers to some specific event or specific time when something happened in the history. Some games like 18 Chesapeake or 18 CZ, they refer to the area, geographical area. And that's why they start with 18, because this creation and developing of railways happened in the 19th century. And we are investors investing in these companies. We are buying and selling shares. Very simple, just buy and sell pieces of paper. And then those companies, they do simple thing. They just lay the track. You lay simple tile on the game board. You may place a token as a station. If you have trains, and you will have trains which are just cards, you virtually run these trains, meaning you go from city to city, depends on how many cities that train can go through. Each city generates some revenue, you get that revenue, and you either pay it out to the shareholders or you keep it in the company so that you can buy more trains later in the game. And that's it. And this gets repeated over and over and over and over again. It's simple. It's very, very simple. But the strategic depth in this game is phenomenal. just because it gets repeated many times. It may be long for some people. However, when I play a 3-hour game or 4 hours game, it just flies by. I don't even notice when these 4 hours are gone. I'm constantly in the game, constantly thinking about what needs to be done, how I need to do it. In these games, they allow me to find the strategy, and I really mean the strategy, and execute the strategy. They allow me to see several turns, several operational rounds ahead and see, okay, here, based on the current situation, I see the plan. I see that I can do something 3-4 rounds later, but I need to do certain steps. They can prevent me from doing that, but I can prevent them from preventing me to do that. So it's like a chess type of strategy, thinking ahead and branching these variations. I can see it, and if I can make it, it's so rewarding. If I don't make it, I see exactly where I made a mistake, or where was the breaking point, or what move I didn't see the other player did, and he broke my strategy, or he broke my tactical plan, and I have to find a different solution now. It's totally luck free. All the information is public, and it's, as I said, it allows me to play many different scenarios in my head while the situation is developing on the game board. It is mean. Yes, it is mean. It's like chess. In chess, the player comes in and eliminates your pieces. Yes, that's how chess is played. And in this game, you can be blocked out. Someone comes to the city, builds a station there, and blocks you out from the rest of the map. This is something you have to see ahead. Someone can buy the new train, and your old trains are obsolete. They rust, and they're removed from the game. This is the essential part of the game, rusting the trains. That simulates the technology, development of the technology. At the start of the game, you only have small trains, low technology. So the game can span over the several decades. And that's why those trains that come early in the game will be eliminated later in the game. And when I see opportunity to do that, I will slow down my opponents, and they will have to buy new trains, which slows them down. Yes, it may be mean, but that's how the game is played. And finding these opportunities and making sure this is happening, preventing me from getting into that situation. This game has so much depth. I have played many games by now, online. There's a fantastic platform online, 18xx.games. I've tried many different games, and when I played 15th game, I've learned something new. Oh, I said, this is what I can do in this game. This is another tactical or strategic element of the game. Phenomenal. I've been playing these 18xx games since, and loving the system more and more and more. 18 Chesapeake was the game which was published in 2020. These games didn't look really nice 10-15 years ago. Now the new publishers with the new prints of these games, they look more beautiful, they're more appealing, and they're shorter. Yes, there are games which can take 6-8 hours, but the games like 18 Chesapeake, we can finish it online in 2.5 hours online. Live, add half an hour to that, maybe 1 hour if you think about the situations. The first game can take 1 hour longer, especially if you're new to the system, but it's no more 6-8 hours games. These games, many of these new games can be finished in the weeknight easily, for 3 hours, 3.5 hours easily. 3.5 hours is the time which we spent playing Lacerda games, for example, or when we play Tekkenu, 2.5 hours easily, or that types of games. So it's nothing unusual to play a 3-hour game these days. 3-hour game, 3 hour Euro game. So for me, 3.5 hours of 18xx game is not really much, especially when I have so much fun and I love and I enjoy these games. I have a small collection already here. Every game is slightly different than the other. It's like having the worker placement system, worker placement mechanism, and this mechanism can have many variations. So even these 18xx games have many variations, and each of them creates a different environment, and the games play totally differently. I'm just in love with this system. Beautiful, strategically deep games, simple moves. It's not like thinking about 15 different options in my turn. No, the options are very small. Placing a station. Do I place a station or not? Simple decision. If I do, where? Very simple. When I gain the money from my trains, do I pay them out or keep them in a company? Sometimes I can half pay, half keep. What do I do? 2 or 3 options, not more. But why do I want to keep the money? Why do I want to pay out? If I want to keep it, it has some consequences. When I want to buy a more expensive train, do I need to keep it now? Or I could be talking for hours about the system. It's so simple, really simple, but with lots of strategic depth. I have not seen this in many games, and I'm wondering why I was just not interested in these types of games before. Maybe I had the impression that these games are very complex, complicated, they're long, and they were. Some of them were, yes. And they're mean. But when I finally tried 18 Chesapeake, 18 Chesapeake is a game which is the best game, one of the best games as the first game in the system. It will teach you all the basic things, all the things you can find in many other games. If you learn 18 Chesapeake, you basically know 90% of the rules of other games, other 18xx games. But hopefully these games will go through some renaissance now. There are more and more of these games published, beautiful printings, and I'm just fascinated with the system. As I said, strategic depth with simple rules, something which is totally my personal taste. I will be making videos about 18 Chesapeake, about many other games. I may do some special episode just about the 18xx, just to give you some introduction. So 18 Chesapeake, my number one of 2020. I can already say it's not my favorite of 18xx, not because it's one of my favorites, but I found 18xx games which I love even more than 18 Chesapeake, but 18 Chesapeake was published in 2020. But it's the entire system which really I love it so much. So this is completely uncontested number one of 2020 for me. Thank you very much for watching. I could be speaking and talking about many other games we played this year, but more on that in top 50 of all times, hopefully in April. So again, thank you very much for watching. Looking forward for your comments. I'll do my best to answer as many comments as I can. And if you like the channel, if you like the content I create, you can support the channel on the Patreon page. You can subscribe to the channel. So my name is Branislav. You've been watching Nithrania YouTube channel and top 25 games of 2020. And hope to see you next time with another video.